And now for the main event. Today's moderator, Jerel Dye, has a background in fine art but has been steeped in ink and slinging comics since 2009. His most recent graphic novel, Einstein, written by Jim Ottaviani, was selected by Booklist as one of the top 10 graphic novels of 2022-23. In addition to his illustration, Jerel teaches courses in comics, drawing, and cartooning to the next generation of aspiring artists at Mass Art, the Elliott School, and others. Without further ado, Jerel Dye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming to this. So I'm a little bit nervous. I always get nervous talking to people, so I'm a little quavery at the start. I apologize. It should smooth out once we get going, but I always like to preface that. So here we're talking about decoding design in comics. Many artists out there in the world are happy to make comic books as books of a very familiar object, but there are some of those among us who want to expand what we think of when we think of comics. Asking questions like, how does form of a comic alter the reader's experience? How can the shapes, the layouts, the way it's folded, the material the comic book is made from, come together to change the way we feel about a story? How can it change the meaning? And where's the line between the comic book and the work of art? Comics that push these boundaries are hard to come by. There are artists that make them are pretty rare. Some of the comics are so complicated to make that artists will only ever make a couple dozen. And these sort of comics can be difficult to ship and don't fit on shelves very neatly. So they're a little bit of a pain to store. But if you enjoy geeking out on craft and are interested in unusual comics, they're well worth seeking out. Today we'll be talking to 4 artists pushing the boundaries of what we understand comics to be, and applying an attention to material, form, and design rarely seen in the world of comics. So I'm going to introduce each of you guys and give you a sneak peek of some of the comics they made before we get into the discussion about decoding design. So Rachel Bard, say hello.
Hello.
Is a cartoonist and illustrator who loves monsters, sad stories, small press publishing, creating unusual mini-comics in a variety of formats and styles. She likes to experiment with unconventional book formats and materials. Her comics are short, all ages, and usually fit in the palm of your hand. Pipa Estrela. Pipa is a queer, multiracial crafter, cartoonist, and clown from Providence, Rhode Island. They're multidisciplinary. Guys, tongue twisters.
I know.
These multidisciplinary,
Too many things.
It's a tough one. Creative practice is all about play and experimentation with a focus on telling stories that capture soft moments, liminal spaces, and big feelings. Pipa loves to create art that sparks joy and brings comfort to anyone who needs it. Jillian King. Do you prefer D King or King?
Oh, I just stick in there because there's a lot of Jillian Kings.
Oh,
But
gotcha.
you can call me Jillian King. That
Jillian
is
King,
A-okay.
okay. Jillian King is a Boston-based design strategist and doodler curious about people and storytelling. Trained as an industrial designer, they explore how physical forms, from simple folds to dynamic pop-ups, shape narratives. Their work blends whimsy with the mundane, with a soft spot for poetry and memoir comics. When not making tiny paper books, they enjoy creating unusually flavored waffles. Very curious. Maddie Sackett is a Brooklyn-based cartoonist from Virginia who's obsessed with silly, genuine stories, bright colors, vivid graphic novels, and any form of DIY printing and zines. In her comics, she utilizes a variety of mixed media, including screen printing, collage, digital, carving, ink, and oil paint. Her work revolves around themes of mental health, found family, femininity, and finding grace through grief and loss. Give them a round of applause. So I wanted to start out today's discussion by talking a little bit more about each of you. You all make unique and unusual comics, things that are atypical, right, to what we mostly think of when we think of comics. So I wanted to ask, how did you end up here? Did you start making out more traditional comics, or were you doing other kinds of artwork and discovered comics along the way? Was there some other kind of process? And you guys can just jump in, or we can go in order, however you want to do it.
I can go. I went to School of Visual Arts, and at first I was in the illustration major, and my painting teacher was repeatedly getting really angry with me because I kept oil painting like words onto the canvas and like writing out stories, and that wasn't like chill, I guess, or usual. And I just kept wanting to do something where I was both expressing myself visually but also like words and sentences and telling stories, and I felt like I couldn't do that enough in illustration. So I think I started on the very physical side and then was like, oh, I can put words on top of this, and that's a comic. So then I switched to comics, and I've fallen in love with it.
Yeah, I always really liked comics, but I always felt like, this is what I always like tell people, especially younger people, is like I never felt like I was like good enough to like make them, so that I never started, which is the only way to guarantee that you won't get better at something is to just never try. So I didn't really make comics until I was in college. I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I was in oil painting at first, and I just was kind of getting like bored with it. Like I was like, I want to do something more like, I always say I want to do something more complicated and difficult. Like I want something that's like a harder problem to figure out. And so it was like, comics seems hard and difficult. I'll do that. And I never really knew that like this kind of stuff existed prior to that. I took Beth Hetland's class. Shout out to Beth Hetland, who is watching my table right now. And she brought in, like, one of our first classes, she brought in like a bunch of like examples of like weird, like different formats and shapes and textures and stuff. And I was like, you can do that? And then it kind of just immediately became my thing. Like I was just like, well, if that's an option, I want to just do that. And I kind of have just spiraled from there.
Very cool.
Awesome. So I relate to that a lot. I think like growing up, I was like, comics theory, we can read all about. Like, super cool. I'll read all the comics. But like actually making comics was a little intimidating to me. So when I made my first zine, I made this like freshman year of college. It's more of a book. There are no words, but it was weirdly shaped. And I didn't realize that I was doing this until like I got asked to be on this panel, and it was like, can you be on this panel about form and storytelling? And I realized all my zines are weirdly shaped. And I think part of where that comes from, I studied industrial design in school. And so like with that, when you're solving a problem, it's really solution agnostic. So there's not a defined solution to a question. You have to think about the formal properties of whatever you're using to solve it. And so for me, I think that translated into bookmaking, where even when I was like, oh, I'm not going to have traditional dialogue or words, because those are scary too, I can at least play with form and shape of materials in an interesting way.
I always loved comics. I like grew up reading them. Like my dad read Tintin stories to me as like bedtime stories. That was like what I was growing up on. But it wasn't until like post undergrad that I started to be like, oh, I want to try making them. And I started with, like the little super simple zines, just line art. And like I had always been drawing, but like never really got like so much experience that I felt good about, like confident. And then I like on a whim, like applied to the Center for Cartoon Studies, and once I was there and like amongst comics and was put through being like, you make 8 pages in 1 week, go, just do it. I got over myself. And then I realized that like I've also like really loved crafting, a lot of like hand textiles. I've been like sewing since high school. And I would be like learning crafts all the time. And I thought I can put them together. And then people liked it, and then so I was like, I'm just gonna keep doing that. And a big kudo on like, comics are hard, but what if you make them harder? And it's really satisfying.
That's great. So this is interesting. A couple of you guys talked about it. That you both talked about the interesting problem being something that's alluring to you in terms of a creative act. So I'm wondering, like, what is the process like for when you're approaching a new comic? Are you starting with a story? Do you have a medium that you want to play with, and we'll figure out the story as you go? What comes first? What happens next? How does it form for you?
I'll jump in. For me, it's feeling. Usually, my comics are me trying to like process something in my life, whether it's just like something that happened or like grief or just weird feelings that I'm having. So a lot of it starts with just like I need to get something out, and then how that feeling needs to be expressed changes each time. Sometimes I know right away that I'm like, oh, this needs to be some watercolor play. And sometimes I don't know what it wants to be, and it starts with like, okay, writing or doodling, and then experimenting from there.
So
Yeah.
the feeling that leads you in the direction of the
Yeah,
medium
it's
you're
like
gonna pursue.
I just keep,
Yeah.
keep fiddling with it and being like, does this feel right? And a lot of the times, like my gut will be like, no, this is like you're not done with this yet. My first like needle felted comic was from like I did a mini folded zine and it was supposed to be magical, and it was like this is not magic enough. So I need
Yeah, that's good.
it needs to be more magic, and needle felting was like the most recent craft I had learned. So I was like, what if I try that? And it did. It became more magical.
How long did that take?
Like the process of getting there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like at least a month of work.
Trying
like,
things out.
yeah,
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
things out and process. Yeah.
Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I like most artists, I feel like the sort of blank page problem is really difficult for me. Like if your options are literally anything, I'm like, well, I have no ideas and I can't make anything. And so I feel like a lot of the sort of like weird little shapes and the formats will help me, because then it's a constriction. Like then it's like I had these little chicks. They're Easter decorations, but I just really loved them. I've always loved them. And I was like, I want this to be on a book somehow. And once that was sort of the concept, I'm like, what can possibly work with that? But then also once you've like gotten there, it really kind of makes a lot of decisions for you, because then there's like that narrows it down what you could possibly make. And so a lot of times I'll make like just a completely blank book, still not knowing what the story is going to be, that is like the correct shape and size and everything, and then be like, okay, what kind of story would work for this? So that's what I do with a lot of the like strange material ones, like the Chinchilla Illustrator, which I think I sent to you with the little tiny books inside it. This is about an artist, and she's looking through her old sketchbooks, and also she's a chinchilla. But I had this like form for a long time with like, I was like, I want a book with little tiny books in it. And I kept like going through different ideas over a long period of time. I would like pick it up and like try some stuff and then be like, no. And then like, so it was like a couple of years that I like had like a blank one of these before I was really like, this is the idea that I like actually feel connected to and that I want to tell.
That's very interesting. That one in particular, did the book within the book, did that take even longer, or was that kind of solved once you figured out the overall story?
That's a good question. This took me like forever. I was working on this, I think this was 2021. I started writing it like in January, and just like off and on was doing it like the entire year. Like I think I finished it like in December of that year. I work slow. Well, sometimes I do. Sometimes I work slow and sometimes I work fast.
So you put
but
a
a lot
lot
of times
into
it's
each
like,
step of the
yeah,
process.
it's a lot. The process of like thinking of it and like writing it and figuring it out is like very long. And then once I like know what the story is, then I feel like I can sort of like finish it very quickly. But yeah, the little tiny books, I was thinking about, it was actually like I was doing this, like in the book, she's like feeling uninspired and like not feeling good about her work, and then she goes and like finds her old journals and starts like looking through them and like sort of realizes some of the things that she like connected to art when she was like younger, like, oh, I loved this and I didn't care what it looked like or what other people thought or whatever. And like I've had that experience, so like I think I was thinking about this as I was like doing this and like looking through like my old sketchbooks and being like, I remember when this was
Almost autobio.
fun. Oh, it's totally autobio. But I've had a lot of people come up to me and be like, oh yeah, this is exactly like how I feel about like my process or whatever. And like I really love to hear that. I'm like, good, it's not just me.
So, Jillian, you have some non-linear comics. Was that process a lot different than the other kind of comics?
Ooh, so I guess usually like it actually all starts in like my notes app.
Okay.
Like I'll write out a story because I'm trying to think I'm like which is the most non-linear because to me they're all very linear because I'm making them. But I think like all the comics they start out with something like I want to learn. So it could be like you were talking about like exploring a form where I'm like, oh, like there's this like pocket puzzle that I keep seeing everywhere and I want to like play with that. Or it could start with I want to make like a pop-up comic. In terms of the linearity, yeah, like I think for me, it does flow in like somewhat of a linear way, but like also there's kind of like this aspect of you have to like control of it. Like you just release it into the wild and see how people engage with it. And that's equally delightful.
And Maddie, in your comic, Ren is All Right, you're using a magic wand to reveal, or a magic viewer, to reveal a second layer of dialogue with a lot of other dialogue. How does one go about writing and coming up with the because that's like a weird, interesting problem.
Well, I was gonna say, I feel like normally I'm a big thrift store junkie. So like when you're talking about the Easter decorations, I'm right there with you. Normally I think that I start with finding a material and then being like, what can this do? But Ren is All Right, it was just heavily based on like my own thought process. I just feel like sometimes reality is a little hard for people who are really anxious to grasp correctly. And I just kept running into these situations where I was hearing something that other people were not hearing. Like I was hearing something so negative that just was not there. And my partner is usually who sets me straight on that and is like, that person did not say that. Like they liked you. You're totally fine. And so I wanted to do something with the lettering that captured like that double meaning in it. And I researched a bunch of different like lettering techniques and stuff. And I had remembered this is like often like a kid's craft. Like you scribble with red over top of like a blue message and then you use like a little gel over it. So I did that with the lettering. So all of the red text is her catastrophizing what other people are saying to or about her, and then the little decoder shows what was actually happening.
Yeah, it's surprising that because it's usually scribbles on texts.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
fact that it's text on text and
I wasn't sure if it would quite
amazing.
work, but it worked out. Yeah.
Cool. I come from a background in fine art. And there's a lot of this in like new media, and there's a lot of discussion in that field about the material that's used in the artwork. It's important that the material has meaning, both for the artist creating the thing and for the way the public perceives that material. So I wanted to ask you guys, like, what are your feelings about the materials that you use? What meaning do you get from crafting with those materials, and what meanings do you want to convey to the readers of your comics from those materials?
I'm like I said about thrifting, like I definitely buy lots of art materials that are brand new. I'm obsessed with anything like that, but I do feel like a special feeling whenever I'm using something that's getting reused or was like thrown away one time already. I think that means a lot to me, and I think it shows through to other people a lot. It's like, oh, this is something I would have just gotten rid of. So I think that holds something really special, like it was something before, and that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I really like I like things that are like precious little objects, and I feel like a lot of like the stuff that I make will be that. Like I sold out of my little shell books, so you have a picture of them somewhere, but I would have brought one of those. But that's something where like I don't actually think they're that fragile, but like they feel fragile, and so I feel like when people pick them up, they want to be very precious with it, and like I really like that. Like I don't know, like I feel like it just has a different feeling than something that is just like and there's a real like we had sort of briefly talked about this yesterday that like it really matters that it's in this format. Like it really matters that it's printed and that it's like presented in this specific way, and it really like changes it as opposed to just like reading the same like drawings or whatever on a screen. And like The Unraveling, which this is my latest book. I don't know how much I want to say about this, but like I've sort of disconnected from my family this year, and this is sort of like about that, not in like a literal way, but like that's what I feel like it's about. And my mom was always like a big knitter, and so that's why I wanted the yarn to be a part of it. And I don't really do anything with yarn, so even like going to buy the yarn was such a like visceral like experience for me of like, oh, this like hurts, I like it. Like this is what I want this to like to be for me. So I don't know, sometimes it's like just sort of a meaning for me where I feel like this really means something to me that other people aren't gonna know when they like walk up to the table and see it. And I like that because it makes me feel like I can sort of express these like deeper things but without being like exposed. Like if I don't want to tell someone that's the reason, they're never gonna just like guess that that's what it is.
So I think that the intentionality of the material might clue people in that this has meaning, even if they don't necessarily know what it means, and that might make the reader's experience like a little bit more intimate. I keep using that word, but
I really like, again, like talking about the shells again, like I made that I don't like to tell people what I think it's about because I've had so many reactions from people like saying what it's about that are different than what I intended. So like I think it's about grief, but I've had people like, these two people came up and she was like, oh, this is about like saving the earth. And she says to her friend, and they were so excited and they like bought one and they're so like delighted with it. And I was like, that's wildly not what I intended. But I love that. Like I love like I wrote something that like felt very personal to me. And then as over the experience of sharing it with other people, like they take other meaning and sort of change it. Like it's like if I just kept this to myself, it would be one thing. It has become so many things over the years of like sharing it with other people that have nothing to do with anything that I would have thought of. And I really like that sort of like what I consider like the back and forth experience of like being the creator and reader.
nice.
For me, I think, I guess like one of my favorite things with comics and like even just as a medium is like you can take silly things very seriously and serious things very silly. So for me, like, in the sense of material, I've got like these super tiny books that people have to squint to look at, and they're all about like day-to-day things that bring me joy. So like awkward dance moves, soup. So getting people to like spend more time on that is really great. I've also got like, I was thinking about the pop music at the gym and how it's like really, really intense. And I was like, can we make that even louder? Can we do a pop-up book about this pop-up music at the gym and how it gives me existential crises? Also, you know, like I think it's stuff like that, or even like me being creepy and like looking in my neighbor's windows at night while I'm on Zoom. Stuff like that. I think like comics is a really great medium to like elevate that, and like what feels like a really humble, personal, mundane experience is something that maybe is a little more universal than I first thought.
Yeah, I'm gonna move this. Yeah, for me, the materials themselves. I do a lot of like trying to like make them reflect the content in a lot of ways. Sometimes it's to make it match, sometimes it's to contrast, because the experience is so tactile, that like a lot of it is just like I'm showing you the process, I'm playing with it. Some examples over here, I have that bottom one is made of just like cotton balls and sequins, and I made that during a time where I was in the middle of my thesis here at CCS and I couldn't draw anymore. Every time I tried to draw something, I thought this is terrible, and switching to different materials kind of helped me heal through that burnout, because I was literally just like playing with fluffy stuff, but then the words and thoughts of that piece are so contrasting because it is a lot about like that self-deprecation and like the like negativity that you can have, but it's cotton, it's sequins, they're shiny, and it's cotton, it's soft, and so that's like really, I feel like it's jarring, but it was important for the process. And then the top one there was a wood burned comic, and that one I just really wanted to do wood burning. I really wanted to try it. It was something new, and I decided to tell a little story about a seed because I thought, oh, it's like I'm using a piece of nature, recreating it, and I want to tell a story that is based on the material. And then I don't know if you have the one with the like envelopes, the like little red ones. I'm not sure if I don't think I had that. No, yeah. There was another one that I wanted to make a comic that was about a collection of red envelopes that I had, like the Chinese red envelopes for New Year's, and drawing like I couldn't capture the beauty of them in what I wanted to show off. So I actually used them themselves in the comic process. Because I was just like, why do more work when I have the thing and that's what I want to show you. I want to show you the thing. So here's the thing.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So all of these approaches, all of the comics that you make, they kind of become more than comics. We've already talked about that. They're sort of like art objects. But do you ever consider what you are making as fine art? It's a big question. A lot of people just reject it because it's too elitist. And I feel like comics tend to be more open to broader audiences. But what are your feelings about fine art and how you might fit within that category? No one likes that category. No one. Too stuffy.
I don't think I've ever really thought about it. Because I started out as a painter and I still paint. And I don't know, I'm not really against it, but I'm also just the thought has literally never occurred to me whether it's fine art or not.
I like the idea that all of these are comics and fitting it very firmly in that category, just because I think it makes other people realize that they can branch out with comics and it can look really different than just ink on paper or digital panel borders,
So it's a bridge.
Yeah. I'm trying to say that they can be a lot closer than they are,
Yeah, cool. So I wonder if we could dip in a little bit about Shop Talk and what your studios look like. What materials do you have on hand? What's the crafting process like for you, both in terms of making the things that turn into the comics and then some of you actually making the comics, the short print runs that you do. So I wonder if you could talk about your studio setups.
Yeah, I have an at-home studio that is where I make a really, 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 really big mess. And then I have, I'm part of the Bench Press and Career Archive studio, which is where I go for the bookmaking. It's that's where I print and where I assemble books and cut. And it's nice because other people use the space so I can't make a mess. And that's an important balance.
You have to be respectful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess for me, I invested in a desk that was bigger than my childhood IKEA desk recently. It was very exciting. And I keep that in my bedroom, where I also have 3 printers, but only 2 of them work. And so from that space, that's where I print all my things. I cut all my things. You were talking about the process of making comics. For Mice this year, I realized I had 5 new comics to assemble, all of which are weirdly folded. And so for me, a lot of it is just putting in the time to cut a bunch of different things and thinking about are there interesting ways I could print this to minimize paper, to maximize the ink I'm using, things like that. Just since I'm pretty attuned to that, since it's all just one man, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also have all my stuff at home. I have a color laser printer and then various paper cutters, staplers, all the weird little things. I have a Cricut, which is how I cut these out. So people will ask how do you get the cuts so clean? And I'm because I don't do it. The machine does it.
What is a Cricut?
A Cricut is it's not a laser cutter, but it's a little knife, and it'll cut on a vector. So you just stick the paper to a sticky mat, and then just feed it into the machine, and it'll cut it out.
And you do it one at a time that way? Is that how you have to do it?
It'll cut one page at a time. Okay. And in theory, you can cut stuff that's printed. There's no way to register it to the print, so you have to just kind of figure it out.
That's interesting. That's tricky.
Yeah, that's how the little babies and stuff are made. Yeah, and then I have one circle hole punch that I punch through the whole book of these. This punch was given to me. It's 1.25 inches. This is the rabbit holes that I go down. It's from this weird discontinued company, and they don't make anything that works like that. So I needed a new one because it was dulled out, and I had to go on eBay and find one because I was what am I gonna do without it? I really back myself into very specific corners with materials where I'm what will I do without my weird little felt objects that I need?
Yeah, go ahead, Benny.
I work out of my Brooklyn studio apartment. So, well, not a studio. I just work. My studio is my bedroom, so it's right beside my bed. I just graduated like last year, so I've been desperately missing SBA's print lab. It's so beautiful and nice, and my partner bought me a big old laser printer for Christmas last year, which was like the best thing that's ever happened to me. So now I get to print all out of my bedroom, and I have all of my craft stuff shoved into corners. It's very crowded, but it's working for now.
Not as much oil paint these days, then?
No, not a lot. Not a lot. Sometimes.
How are we doing on time? Okay, we got plenty. Okay, great. So you guys talked a little bit about constraints earlier and how constraints affect your storytelling. Maybe talk more about that. Is there any time you've specifically had constraints that you found really helped a story or helped blossom a story? Or are there any times where constraints like really stymied what you wanted to do with a specific comic?
I can do this one. I have this comic, Death to All Girls, and the whole thing is it's 6 different comics all about like girlhood and growing up, and they're all supposed to be done in like quote unquote childish medium. So it's crayon, colored pencils, glitter glue, a lot of glitter glue in there. And I had an assignment in school that was like just to make an unusual comic, like do something strange. And I was like, cool, I already do that like quite a bit. But I was working them all in so I could build this zine and fit them in like that. And I used that assignment to make these little clay figures. So they're just like silly little tiny clay guys.
I'm sorry,
and they're
I don't have that one to
on
share,
a little
but
paper set. Yeah, it's right here. And I set them all up, and they're having a little sleepover. And I feel like that really pushed what I wanted to be saying with the whole book, because it's so playful, having like these childish mediums like Play-Doh and clay stuff going on. So it felt very fitting, and I think it pushed my point further, even when that wasn't always the initial like thing I was going for.
Yeah, Pipa, you also have a book that features toys and worm dreams, right?
Yes, yeah, my little worms on a string. I love worms on a string. If you can't tell. And yeah, that is like a lot of it. It's like, yeah, posing. And that one was just like, I just wanted to use, they've taken over my brain and so much of my art. Like I have stickers and prints, and I was like, it's about time they have a comic for themselves. And so that was a lot of like, I had to arrange them in particular ways, but I didn't want to like have to do like any wire or like weird post work. So I literally was just like, put it on the page and hope it like can wrap itself in just the right position. Like, and then I just took pictures, and then like there's no physical copy of this comic that is like I can put on the wall. It's ethereal. It's only the print.
Are they playing Limbo?
Yes. Yeah, I had to. That is
really
like
nice.
coffee stirs. Yeah, and I was like building little props, and it was just like, what do I have around that I can break and make tiny because they're like this big. Yeah, so that's very fun.
What about you, Rachel? Did you ever
What was the question?
about constraints?
Oh.
Like how does I mean, you talked about it a little bit
Yeah.
before, but do you want to elaborate on any of that?
I feel like, again, yeah, like I like to have a constraint because I feel like it sort of narrows me into a direction. I was thinking about like, this is an example where it took me forever to figure out how to do a comic on this. Like I had the shape of it. It's little babies. But I was like, there's not hardly any room to do anything. And so like that was like really challenging to be like, I like to have something sort of concise, but sometimes it's like so concise that you're like, I actually don't know what to do with so little. But I don't know. I like how I feel like every time that I've like really struggled with that, I'm like, oh, but it turned out fine. This was another example where like it's just so small that I was like, even for me, this is small. Like I don't know what to do with like such little space. But I like how that makes you really like prioritize what is important. When like you can't say everything, you have to really be careful about like every word that you say in a story.
Mm-hmm. It has more meaning.
Yeah.
When there's only a handful of words, each word has more meaning. Yeah. What about you, Jillian?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the moments where constraints really hit was with share content. I wanted to have like kind of with an 8.5 by 11, you can fold it and cut it in a way that you have like these flippity flappities. And I also wanted to have fancy paper for these little leaf guys. But because of like the structure that required, it also meant that my story had to be symmetrical. So the structure of the pages had like the first half had to match the back half. So when I was stapling it, it would all work out. Maybe there's a better way to do it. Someone please let me know. But kind of like what came up with that was thinking about like, yeah, like how do I pace this so I can hit the moments that I want to open up and dive into. And even if these moments I'm opening up and diving into, I ended up adding like an extra page in the middle because I was like, oh, could I just say this with one thing? No, you need a full book within your book. So for me, it was a little bit of like a back and forth where I made the thumbnails and I shared it with like some of my classmates who I was taking this class with at the time. And I was like, oh, I guess I do have to do some more thinking on it. So it's kind of a process and a cycle of conversation within the form.
Cool. So there is a term that I think could be applied to a lot of your work, and that term has both positive and negative connotations. And the term is clever. I was wondering, have you ever thought about the term clever? Inventiveness is a good thing. Thinking outside the box is usually a good thing. But sometimes, mostly by like kind of curmudgeon-y critical people, they think of work as being too clever. And the cleverness gets in the way of the emotional content of the story, or maybe makes a story hard to read. Do you ever deal with that? Do you ever have any doubt, or can you talk about cleverness in comics?
This is. I feel the same way about fine art. Where I was just like, huh, me? Yeah, I think that like the stuff that I make is mostly. I'm not really thinking about anybody else. I am thinking about like what delights me. And if that means like making things more complicated and silly, that's what I do. And what I've found is that I'm not alone in the things that delight me. Like people respond to the work because it's, I guess, clever or is strange or different. And there's like a really gravitation to the unusual. And that's like what I really want to do. Like I make these for myself and I'm not thinking about you, but really I want to connect with you. So it's like, the two-way street. And I'm not alone. Like I put together an anthology of like other creators who make work in these like weird formats. Because I was like, oh, my thought isn't I'm clever. It's I'm crazy. This is crazy. Why would you do this? But then that anthology was like, many people saying, yes, we're crazy too.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Yeah, I think for me, I have had moments where I'm like, oh no, I over-engineered this. This comic, I was explaining it to Jerel because there's no way to read it unless someone shows you how. I made it during a little residency, so it was a little bit rushed. But what it is, it's called Stick Season, and it's a book above a book that also turns inside out to become another book above a book. And I think like in making this, like the designer in me was like, the usability is not here unless you have like a how-to like video tutorial. And so for me, like, I think it's like almost more of like an art object in that sense where people can engage with it, but it's not necessarily functionally conveying a consistent message. Not that, I don't know, everyone interprets things differently, but
my experience with that one was I was exploring this and getting kind of layers of meaning, and it was very like, it's more like, it's not like reading, it's like play.
Exactly.
It's a game that you're exploring and a story that you're getting from little bits and pieces.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know that I've had this experience very often. I feel like a lot of my stuff is kind of straightforward. I do sometimes get people that are like, how do you read this? Or how do you open this? Or they're like afraid to touch it. Or they're like, I don't know what this is. But it made me think of these. I don't know if you have the photo. This is, I guess it's a book. It's a bunch of cards that are like one panel of a comic, and then you can like put it together and make your own comic. And so I feel like this is the one that I end up explaining the most because people just like pick it up and like look at it and are like, what? I feel like just repeatedly I'm like explaining what this is, and I'm like, and they're double-sided, and you can put them together and make your own story. And they're like, oh, okay. Because I don't know, like I feel like looking at it, I'm like, this seems straightforward, and people are like,
it's a common practice so I teach comics, and that's actually like a thing that when teaching the basics of comics, having people create disparate panels and find ways to tell stories is like an interesting process. So you're teaching a little bit about how comics work with that book, I think.
I know. I showed my books a couple years ago to like a group of 6th graders, and they were so into it. They like all got like really into it, and I was like, this is delightful.
I think I guess it's a book is a pretty good tagline for this panel. I thought that your word was gonna be gimmicky, because I get that a good bit, like not in an insulting way, but just like when I'm talking to friends about it, like it's like this comic totally has like a gimmick to it, and that sounds kind of like a bad thing in the sense that I'm like trying to catch your eye and sell you something like that's all tricks and whatever. But I think it's just that we're finding these weird niches because we like exploring, and we're just going like pushing something as far as it goes, and it just seems different, and it has a weird edge to how you consume it. But like, that's interesting. We've all had positive experience with people interacting with this and immediately being like, oh, this is so cool. Like people gravitate towards how different they are.
Yeah, totally. I thought about that word gimmick too.
Yeah,
but I feel like the difference between gimmick is that that's usually to sell something.
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
all making stuff because you want to make this stuff. And the fact that people like it and want to buy it is just a bonus.
It is.
Right? Yeah, that's great. Thank you, guys. With the work that you make that's also unique, we talked about this earlier, it's hard to find other folks like you. I mean, sometimes you found some people to make an anthology together. Do you have artists that you feel like influenced what you do? Both in terms of the form and these like unusual forms that you make, but also in terms of like story or vibes, or maybe there are some non-comics art that influences you. What gives you inspiration?
My favorite artist that really inspired me with comics is Zoe Thorogood. I really like her. I wouldn't say like her work is not like as intricate as like special cutout pieces and whatever, but it's very breaks the storytelling like pretty often, and she changes the styles consistently throughout the book. And I find that really interesting and inspiring to not have to just stick to like one thing.
Yeah, because
like,
you've done a lot of like collage comics where you're using collage and digital and paint and all kinds of different stuff.
I love to bring a lot of things together, and I like something to look consistent, but I like that it can be a wide variety of stuff and still be like consistent.
Any other inspirations?
One of like the first like mixed media comics that I encountered was by May Doliveau. And she does paper cut comics, and they're like super dimensional, and she's done like many kinds of paper cut comics, and that all look very different. And she plays with shadow and dimension, and I came across that, and it was like a compilation of like American Best Comics or something like that, and that was like what pushed me into trying. So I always think about her.
And you have one story that's all paper cut.
Yeah. That was my first like mixed media. That was my first attempt, and that's a comic that's just about making comics in a way, about creation. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, for me on the form front, I think like A.T. Pratt has some really lovely like expressive work where it's like very kind of like expressively drawn, but also like highly engineered in the sense that he uses like all these pop-ups and things like that. There's also one artist, I want to say it's Alex Kostiv or yes, yeah. I have like one of her pieces. It's called Waves, and it's a series of 3 accordions, and they're all like 11 by 17, like glued together on the ends. They're very, very long, and they're all slightly different waves. And so that use of like form to tell like a narrative just through shape is really, really lovely.
Yeah, those are also some of my inspirations. I know Alex. She's we went to school together, and I was talking at a class of hers, and it was very, very interesting and fun to see the students. But I was gonna say, I don't have any specific names of authors, but I always like to look at like children's books and like especially like board books and like books for like really little kids because they have so much more tactile interactive stuff than like any other genre. Is you get the books for the toddlers and they've got like little stuffed animals in there. They've got like things open and like slide and whatever. And I'll like go to, the used bookstore and like get board books. And I'm like, I just want to like take it apart and figure out like how this works. Because there's so much interesting stuff that I feel like it just sort of like goes over the head of like people who are like making, not like adult comics, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No, it's too bad that I mean you guys are doing it like but there isn't like a grand tradition of tactile qualities in books for grown people. So I'm glad that you're here doing this stuff. It's fantastic. So I think I want to do one last question and then we'll open up to you guys to ask your own questions for Q&A. But what's next for you? What projects do you have in the works? Do you have any materials that you're excited to be working with next? What are your plans?
I'm trying to make a big book. All my work has been like a lot of like short little zines, and I want to take these like mixed media stuff into something that's a longer form, which I imagine is going to take me a long time. So I've been very, very like dipping my toe a little bit at a time. But it's going to be a story with like multiple reality hopping and stuff, so I can be like, this is the paper cut world and here's yarn world. And what that will look like, I don't know yet, really.
Yeah, I think Mice has got me really thinking about like goals in the next year. I think for me, 3 S's have come to mind. I want to make something serious, like a longer form graphic memoir to thing. Something silly. I've been thinking a lot about like moth people. And then something short. I think like folks get a lot of joy from these short zines. And even though I don't want to get stuck in a rut, I do have like a little dispenser and I'd love to refill with something new. So maybe neighborhood stories.
Yeah, I've been going to a ton of shows like the past 2 years, and I feel like what I want to do is stop doing that. Like it's too much. I'm like not really making new work, and I want to really just like sort of cut back and like reconnect with my creative process. And this is kind of diverging from everything that we've talked about, but I've started oil painting again for the first time in like 9 years. And so that's been really exciting to me. So I'd like to see like where that goes, even if it's not like a part of this or whatever. It's just sort of like reconnecting with an old friend.
I'm kind of TBD on this. I've had the past 6 months for me have been like a long rush. I made Ren is Alright in a span of a month to put out at SPX, and then immediately after that I was working on like this little video game. It's all paper cut, and it's like it's on my website, and you go through and answer these choices, and my little shopkeeper recommends you one of my zines and gives you like a little discount on the website. But it was like a race to finish that before I got here, and now I'm here and I am like, okay, gotta figure out what's next. I think I'm gonna take a little rest and then I'll be back with something.
Makes sense. I played with the game. It's very clever. Did you do the programming yourself? Is that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's on Rempe, so it's pretty like simple coding. I'm not like smart like that, but it was really fun. I'm pretty proud of it.
That's great. All right. Well, I think we can open up to the floor. If anybody has any questions for any of our artists. Oh, all right, we'll give a round. I don't know how to do this. How do you do these things?
Thank you. I'm wondering if you can speak to how making your comics in these complicated and sometimes like forms that are not easy to engage with when you're not in person, how does that like limit or complicate or even enhance your readership? Like, some of these pieces, I imagine, aren't easy to document, aren't easy to share online. So how do you experience that?
I really am feeling that recently, because Ren is Alright is kind of impossible to show if it's not in person. So I have tried to like document through videos and me like actually touching and flipping through it and trying to show it off. But it definitely is a difference. I see a really different reaction to it online versus like here. Like, I sold out of them so quickly because it's just something you go to and are playing with and touching, and it just doesn't have that same experience online. So I think that's just partially why these types of events are so important for especially artists like us who are making something really weird and crafty. You kind of do need to touch it to really get it.
Yeah, I also sort of have that experience where I just started photographing all of my books. Like, there's not really a way to just take the page and like put the image online. Like, it's not clear at all what this thing is. If you're just looking at like what, like the file that I would print or whatever. So I don't know. I feel like they kind of translate okay in photographs, but it really is not the same. Like, yeah. I also experienced that where I'm like, in person, it's very different.
I do a lot of saying online, you gotta trust me, this is cool.
Yeah, no, I think I feel that too, because I think most of my work, like, there's a pressure to document it in like video, which is kind of time consuming. I know like GIFs can also be useful if you're looking to like plug something into a PowerPoint or something or do it really quick. But yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I mostly just sell things in person because the overhead of like shipping and all that can be like pretty time consuming. But yeah, no, communicating it online and documenting that is really tricky.
Yeah. I feel like I have troubles even just documenting it to print. Like, so much of my work is so like fuzzy in person, right? And it's hard to capture that when it goes to print. And that's just something that's like, you know, learning some photo editing and tweaking, and also just accepting that it's like never going to look exactly the same. And yeah, I do also like in person, it's just nicer. I brought some of my originals and fuzzy stuff if anybody wants to touch, because again, it's like I could show you a picture, but it's really not the same. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
Hello. I was just curious. It seems like so much like effort and craft goes into making like one of these little projects. How do you decide how many you're gonna make? Like, how many copies that you're gonna sell?
I kind of just like continuously make them. Like, I'll just make like a chunk of them as I'm going along, because that is difficult. Some of the ones with like extra pieces to them are kind of dictated by how many of these I can get. Like, that decides how many I'm gonna make at a time. But
Like
yeah.
the shells. How do you get your shells?
Oh, it's been a whole journey. I used to get them at Michael's, and then Michael's stopped selling the ones that were like the right size for me. And so now I've just been going to like every craft store, or like sometimes like oddity stores will have shells. Like, I've really gone like spread out my search of them. There's also California Seashell Company, I think is what it's called, for like wholesale seashells. I know everyone is dying to know where you can buy wholesale seashells. But the problem I have with ordering them online is I need them to be a very specific size to fit the paper. And like online, you can't, like, if I'm looking at it physically in person, I can tell if it'll work or not. And the ones that I've bought in bulk, then like, oh, like 80% of these are like too small and I can't use them.
Yeah, I think for me, some of it's dictated by the medium. So like with Riso, it makes sense to make like a 50 print run of like anything minimum. With these, I rolled up to the residency with no idea what I was going to make. So I only had 50 pages of each of these papers. So that also dictated the form and like how I approached that. With more labor-intensive things like this, it's a little bit of like, am I awake enough to not chop off my finger? This is an important consideration. I think like one of the things I realized, there are limitations to paper and constraints that come with that, but also with my body. So I think for me, like 20 to 30 is always something to aim for, but with things like this, maybe more of a 15 type run.
Yeah, I just print like small batches at a time and deal with that.
Throw them in the backpack and go to a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I relate a lot to continuously making them, or very often making them up to the deadline. My Friday was filled with making the little decoders. They were not done before that.
The first time that I made these, it was for Chicago Zine Fest, and I made them, like I wrote it and made the whole thing start to finish the day before Zine Fest and finished them all like at night. And I was like, a bunch of their eyeballs fell off, and I was like at the show like gluing the eyeballs back. But I was like, you haven't had the full Zine Fest experience if you haven't like been making books the night before.
Yeah.
Any other questions? In the back.
Oh, okay.
I sort of feel like with the amount of detail and like effort that goes into this, it obviously must be very time and energy consuming, and it feels to me like there must be some level of like just like obsessive, like I have to make this. But do you ever just get like very burnt out? How do you maintain that energy to like put so much of your time and effort into these like very like detailed, tedious to make things? Like they're so beautiful, but they're also so exhausting, right? So like, do you ever feel that way? Like, do you ever feel burnt out, and how do you work with that?
Yes. Yeah, it's hard to work with sometimes because like you fold the same thing 200 times and you're like over it.
It's hard enough with regular zines.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of the ongoing struggle. How do you like get yourself to keep going when it's just like, I've done enough for my whole lifetime? Why is it still happening?
I think it's probably just an extreme labor of love. Like I feel often a lot of times refreshed when I'm making these, even though I'm so tired, I'm about to hit a deadline, but I also am surrounded by like little tiny books and things. And I'm sorry, like if I were making these little babies, like once I looked at them and finished, I'd feel like, yeah, this is probably worth it. Like this is a nice guy.
Yeah, I think for me, I think of myself as an ideas person. I have a lot of ideas. Professionally, I work in the land of ideas. And so sometimes I'll have an idea for a really wild book, and I won't think ahead about how painful it will be to make. And then once I have the book, I'm stuck making it. But I think, like, yeah, there is something to be said about, like, having your work, like, in physical form. Yeah, in front of you.
It feels fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, end product is needed for the dopamine. I also try to like really diversify the kind of art making I do, just because like I do, some of it is like burnout, some of it is I get bored, maybe it's the ADHD. Like I just have to do something different, and I've started to do stuff that's like not visual art as much, like trying to get more into like, that's where the clowning stuff came from, was I need to go perform or do something out of my body in a different way. I
follow your clown account. It's great.
Yeah. and like, sewing, making physical things that are just different. And that also like ends up informing the work I make when I'm ready to go back to the comics.
We have time for more? We're okay. Well, thank you so much, guys. Let's give them a big round of applause. And thank you. Please go find these wonderful artists at their tables. They're listed here above, down on the main floor. Thanks again.
This chick is so cute. I've been like looking at it